Thank you. So I'm Bud Parr, and I'm a web developer and designer, and I've been doing that since 2002. And back in 2012, I got involved in static sites and what are now called JAMstack and that sort of thing. So in 2014, I started a site called thenewdynamic.org, and along with that, a meetup group, which is now the JAMstack NYC meetup group. On the newdynamic.org, there's, I think, 180 tools, hundreds of articles, that sort of thing. So if you're looking for tools, if you're looking for resources on those tools, if you're looking for things like showcase sites to prove to your boss or client that people are actually doing this stuff in real life, we have those things there. And here is the site somewhere here. As Gerald mentioned earlier, there's going to be a JAMstack conference in October in San Francisco. I will be there. We have a pretty nice community around all of these topics. We have a Slack channel that's pretty active on a daily basis. I have a newsletter. We have our meetup group. And then I'm on Twitter as well. So you can find me there. As you may know, so the title of this talk, I added something, even better performance for your website using JAMstack tools and techniques. I added the journey part because I realized that that's what web performance is. It really is a journey. It's not a, there's no stopping point or anything like that to it. So I just wanted to share a few things that I learned over time and through this exercise and improving my websites. So I built a website, PerfCrunch. It's a very nice website, beautiful. It has, but it has a lot of articles, all of them with images, and it has a nice search function by Algolia. I can show you the search here. So here's the search function. It's very nice. Ostrich, pillow, that sort of thing. So it's got all the features that you might think that you would require from a website, right? Images, search, a lot of neat articles, right? So here's how I built the site. It's a JAMstack site, of course, so it's static. So all the HTML is statically generated and then deployed to the web. I use a tool called Hugo, which is built with Golang. It's a very fast and very secure tool. Algolia is the search that I just showed you, and then the site is deployed and hosted on Netlify. So just very quickly, because I don't want to talk too much about static specifically, but why would I build my site this way as opposed to, say, WordPress or Drupal or something like that? One, your development process is so much better with sites like this. And I've built hundreds of those sites, and I've built hundreds of these sites, and I'm committed to this because the development process is incredible. It allows you to deliver faster, do more versions. When I was creating this site, I created 9 different versions. I was able to deploy all of them on Netlify, use each of those deployments and testing all at the same time and that sort of thing. I sleep at night. I don't have to manage servers anymore. I don't worry about any of those things. And every last thing can be in version control. So that's amazing. But those are things that are amazing for me. For my clients and users, it's amazing because delivering HTML without having to go to make a database call every page load is very fast. You can serve the HTML from a CDN, and we know that a CDN is going to have nodes everywhere, and so the experience in Helsinki is going to be a lot more like the experience in New York or Dallas or wherever you might be. Security is incredibly good because there's no database to hack, and scaling is amazing too because there's nothing really to scale. So. Again, I won't belabor those points. I want to get back to the website that I built and see some of the challenges that I came up with in building this site. So So again, I put images, I put search. I wanted to have a few of the kind of basic functionalities. It's obviously nothing like real life. Real life kind of sucks. So this is TechCrunch, and I just did a very quick and dirty performance measurement on Lighthouse with them, and it looks like they could use some work too. So what do I do when I want to measure my performance? There are a lot of tools. Many of you may be familiar with most or all of them. The two that I tend to use for different purposes are Lighthouse, which is fairly new, and webpagetest.org. Both of them, I believe, are open source tools. Both of them have a different approach to giving you pretty much the same data. I use Lighthouse because it's very opinionated, and it tells me, as you'll see, some specific things that I can do, some specific user experience things that I need to think about with performance on my website. Webpagetest.org allows you to dig in at an asset-by-asset level, find your bottlenecks, that sort of thing, and I mean, it's incredibly detailed. You could do pretty much just between the two of those, you could stop right there. There are other tools. I did a quick poll in our Slack the other day. A lot of people like GTmetrix, and I've also used Pingdom, some of these other ones, Webhint, and all. And a lot of these tools give you other metrics too, as well, besides performance. So starting out with performance, here's where we are. First off, as I said with the static site, we're already starting out of the gate in pretty good shape because we're serving nothing but static HTML pages, and we're on a CDN. But we're not doing much for performance here. And when I was thinking about this talk, I was thinking, well, this is pretty basic stuff. Why talk about these things? But the truth is, I see a lot of this sort of thing going on anyway on the web. So we're loading some of the code here. I have a mixture of just straight up code, and a little bit of it is Hugo stuff, which you'll see in the brackets. But you can see here where I'm just delivering a style sheet. Nothing special about it. I'm not minifying. I'm not doing anything. It's just a big old style sheet. Here are my scripts and CSS files for the search functionality that I have. So that's full script and then 2 CSS files. And then I'm bringing in my fonts. So, and here we're, kind of being nice, but just picking up a few fonts with some very specific styles. So when I'm doing my tests, one little aside, I just want to make sure that I'm doing all of the tests. I'm going to use mostly for my examples here, because it's very easy and very visual. Gives you, it's very straight up and easy to analyze and look at. But I did all of the tests this way. I used simulated fast. It's kind of too easy with no throttling. It's too easy to get a good score. So, and I just limited my test to performance. So here is my lovely website, PerfCrunch. You can see that my speed index is nearly 7 seconds, 6,680 milliseconds. And that is the time that it takes the contents of the page to be visibly populated. So you can see, and they've been, like I said, very opinionated. They're telling me, oh, look at your images. Your images aren't in next-gen formats. Which isn't relevant to every browser, but to some it is. Eliminate your render blocking resources. And none of these, this is a small site, so none of these are huge things, right? But we can do a lot better than a 61. So we'll look through here and see what we can do to come up with a better score. So here's another view. Again, I mentioned webpagetest.org. This is kind of the same view as before, but a very different perspective. One, the first thing that we're looking at here is our server load time, first byte. Time to first byte measures the back-end processing and redirects and that sort of thing. You can see, just as I said before, we're using static HTML on a CDN, that's a very nice time. Even though our total load time for the page with all those images particularly is 73 seconds. That's not great. So still some room for improvement. In webpagetest.org, you can click through all of these things. You can click through, it's not obvious, but you can click through those buttons up there, and they will give you specific recommendations and information and data on how you're doing there. Even if you're doing well, it's good to click through them. All right, so how are we going to get us to a better place? So first off, we're going to look at our images. We're going to see if we can improve the images themselves and lazy load them, only use them when we need them. We're going to not pull our fonts from Google. We're going to pull them locally. We're going to improve our CSS. We're going to use tree shaking if we can for all of that JavaScript that we're using for search. And we're going to do some other things to improve on top of that. So to do this, to accomplish this, we're going to need some more tools. So we have Webpack. Any tool will do. I use Webpack. So the examples are in Webpack, but we'll use Webpack for processing and bundling our JavaScript and CSS. There's an open source package called Typefaces by Kyle Matthews, who's also the creator of one of the great static site generators, Gatsby, which allows you to get your typefaces locally very easily. ImageX is a CDN just for images, and it allows you to manipulate your images very easily. Lazy sizes for only loading our images when we need them. And Purge CSS, a great tool to make sure that we're only delivering the CSS that we're actually using on our page. So images, let's do images first because images are really, they're big, right? And we got to deal with them. So we're going to compress our images. We're going to use only the size we need. We're going to serve the best format, and we're going to serve only when we need to. That sounds like a lot, but it's actually, because I'm lazy, I'm not really lazy. I build a lot of websites though, and I need the easiest tools that I can get. We're gonna use ImageX, and we're gonna pull in some of their tools. Again, this is some Hugo code mixed in, so the query strings look a little bit strange, but this is what they look like when they're rendered, or something like that. I made it look nice. So we're gonna limit the size of our images here and here. We're going to serve the best version for the browser. So we can just say format auto. Mostly that means WebP on Chrome browsers. So Chrome is a very popular browser, and if we can serve WebP, which is a lossless compression format, then we're going to do that, and that's what this mostly does. Whatever you start out with, it's going to serve WebP if it can, if it's a Chrome browser. And if that's not your audience, then it might not be as big as a concern, but it's going to get you a better score. And then we're going to compress the image here. You can do that on an automatic basis. I just put in a quality, 75% quality and that sort of thing. I made sure that I'm not using any larger size image than I need to. And here, of course, we're using sourceset to make sure that we're only using an image based on the viewport that our images are being delivered in. And of course, because I'm using ImageX, I'm using an outside domain, it doesn't hurt to prefetch the DNS for that. Very small. These things I find are cumulative over a period of time. And I will make these slides. I've put links, or at least I've made them look prettier, but I put links to pretty much everything on the slides and in the end. So there's articles or data or sources in all of them, and I'll make them all available later. So, and then this is what I mentioned before. Only serve the images when you need them. I don't know if you've seen this. So here's our website here. And I think if I load this up, you can see they're coming in, as the page loads. So that's lazy loading. That's a very easy thing to do. In the future, this will probably be done without the help of outside scripts. with the intersection observer API. But for right now, there's a terrific script called lazy sizes that will allow you to do all sorts of whatever iterations. It's like 30 or 40 plugins that you can use to serve your images in the way that you need to. So I pull in lazy sizes. And again, because I'm using Webpack, this is really super easy to just require these scripts, whatever scripts that you need. But so this is a plugin that you can use so that you can provide you know, a no script fallback for people who don't have JavaScript enabled on their browser. And then this is one that I use called Unveil Hooks, which you can use if you're using background images. So, and again, I mentioned Kyle Matthews' Typefaces project. This is a fantastic project. So anytime you can load something locally instead of another external CDN, it's a win. And so that project allows you, it's easiest to use if you're using Webpack. So you just set up a file loader and then again, just require whatever typeface that you need. And there's a few hundred in there. Most of them are the Google fonts, but there's other ones as well. Any open source typeface that you know that they've discovered is in there. But this creates your font files and a CSS file for you to use. So and anybody who's looking at delivering fonts should be following this, you know, the font checklist there too. There's some very helpful stuff there. And then lastly, our CSS. So this is Purge CSS. It scans through all of either your HTML or your templates, and you can set it either way that you want to do that. I use my templates, and you can see that it's going through my layouts here. But either way, it will go through your page. Only deliver the CSS that you're using. So you can see, let's see, I think, will I go back? At this point, after purging the CSS, running a few of these optimizations, we've already gone from 61, our original, up to 90, which isn't too bad. I would not get fired for a 90. But I still have a little bit of room for improvement here by dealing with these things here. So you can see this is, I mean, you can see how ridiculously small this CSS file is. It's 4.8 kilobytes. I should have one little caveat. I use utility class CSS, so naturally it's a little bit smaller than other styles of writing CSS. But nonetheless, it's ridiculously small. But when I started out, I had my CSS, I had the instant search CSS, and then I had the CSS for the font families that I was delivering. I eliminated the original font family CSS, or I combined that into my app just with Webpack. And then I took a few of I just pulled out some of the classes from, I went to their repo, Algolia's repo for instant search, and I pulled out the classes that I need, and then I just added them to my build. And then so after that, I went to a 4.8 kilobyte CSS file. So that was getting, you know, ridiculously small, and only one call. So again, the same thing. We want to do. We want to use only the JavaScript that we need, right? So before, I was just calling in instant search, which is Algolia's very nifty, you know, catch-all. You can just drop widgets into your page, and it does everything for you, and it's pretty amazing. But I was calling one big script for this when I was only using, in this case, 2 widgets, right? So this is a concept by that's part and parcel of Webpack, and one of the reasons that I think, I don't know if other build tools have this or bundlers use this, but it's pretty fantastic and pretty easy to do, because this is all that I did. I just wrote my code a little bit differently and reduced my size of my JavaScript that I was delivering. And then again, and this is pretty, I think everybody knows this one by now, I pulled in my scripts. I defer my scripts. And I always start with the point of deferring them. If I need something that has to be delivered async or something like that, then I do, of course. But but I always start with defer, and I usually don't have a problem with it. And so the difference is that, and somebody correct me if I get this wrong, but async downloads the JavaScript at the same time everything else is downloading, but it doesn't do anything until everything else is downloaded. And defer puts off the downloading of the JavaScript till the rest of the page is downloaded. So that's a no-brainer. You should always do that. And then lastly, I wanted to preload and cache my long-term assets, my assets that aren't going to change very often. So this is my headers file. This, for my case, is, oh yeah, so there's Gerald's words of wisdom for me when we were chatting about this. So I liked it. I kept it in. I don't know. Just made me feel good. So, so I set a bunch of, I preloaded some things over here. So you can see preload as font and my CSS file as style. I'm pretty sure I did my JavaScript. I don't see it, but oh yeah, that's this one down here. And notice that I have no push in here. You have to be very careful when using HT push. Does everybody know what HT push is? HTTP2 push. So it basically gets your assets independent of your HTML. There's no request to find out what assets you need. It just pushes your assets. You're telling the browser, get those assets to the page very quickly. But if your assets are pretty small, then you're going to end up delivering them twice. So be very careful with that. And with all of these things, you have to be very specific to what you are doing. So I put no push in there. And I also set up some caching for these assets too. And you can see those. I can show you in the headers, but so, and here's where we are. We're doing a little bit better now. I mean, this was getting a little bit frustrating because we started at 61 and we got up to 91. And if you sit here and you need 1 point better or something, you might want to run the test like 3 or 4 times and see. But basically, we're kind of not really getting too far. So I wanted to take a look at something else that I might do that's called Turbolinks. So Turbolinks makes your a regular website run a little bit more like an application in that when you request a page, you don't necessarily request the entire page. You only request certain elements of the page. And the effect of that is that it's faster. Or it seems faster. It feels faster. It may be faster, but I use it on the new Dynamics site on category pages when I'm popping around and I want people to be able to kind of just pop through those categories like they were loaded, with JavaScript or something. So, this is kind of an Ajax technique. And you can see here, though, this is my original. I'm just pulling up a sample document. No great shakes. And then afterwards, and you can see these instead of, these are XHR requests, and you can see that, the time isn't all that different or anything like that. But you can see that, well, if you were looking at the browser, you would see this is not changing ever at all. So you can see that it's working properly. The HTML is not, there's no full page request. So this can have its applications. On something small like this, it didn't really do anything for me, and there was a little bit of a cost in the, the work that the JavaScript had to do. So, I went back. That's part of the journey, is trying things out and seeing what's working for your use case or not, right? I also made, and this was actually something I really did, I learned while I was doing this, is this CacheControlImmutable, which just tells the browser that it doesn't have to be checked, doesn't have to go and check to see if the cache has been invalidated. So I did that, and I'm still getting pretty much the same score, 93. That's not too bad, and that was fairly consistent after that. And to be honest with you, I kind of peaked at 93. I guess that's what I'm going to do when I've got, I am loading JavaScript on the page. I am loading a bunch of images and that sort of thing. But it's not bad. Again, it won't get me fired. So I did try minifying my HTML. In Hugo, you can just add a flag to your build command and minify your HTML. That's great. So here was the impact of that. I started out with 3.5 kilobytes for a page, and then I dropped 3.2 to 3.2 kilobytes. Again, this is a pretty small page, so not something that I'm going to see here, but you can see that it did, improve the page size by 8.5%. So depending on the page or the, what's happening or what else is happening on the page, it's an improvement. It didn't really do anything for my scores. Still at the same score, right? But I think it's worth doing, and you can. So then the last thing that I did was I wanted to take a look at service workers. Now, to be honest, I put a fairly rudimentary setup in here. I just wanted to see, what I wanted to do is, in this instance, get an idea if service workers are going to help me improve my score, help me just make the website any faster. So I ripped out the traditional caching methods that I used in my headers, and I put in service workers to cache pages. Now there are other advantages to using service workers, of course. Oh, and I did want to mention, we had in our JAMstack Meetup about a year and a half ago, we had Jeff Posnick from Google's Workbox team talk specifically about using service workers in a JAMstack site. That's pretty interesting. He kind of goes down the rabbit hole of complexity. It's like crazy, but it's pretty neat. And they're aware of this way of building, and it's not, I don't think, the first thing that they're thinking of, but there are techniques that can be used there, particularly in their workbox. That's not what I used here, but so I tried it just from the thinking about it just in terms of caching, not any of the other benefits that service workers might give me with offline and that sort of thing, or maybe app-like qualities that it might have, but just purely just what it was doing here. And I wasn't really gaining anything. So in the final site, I went back to my traditional caching, only because in that sense, there are issues that you're going to have depending on how aggressively you use your service workers that you want to deal with, because you're actually asking people to download your site onto their computer, whether or not they want it. So there are issues with that you want to make sure that you're thinking through thoroughly in your use case to use it. So for this simple use case, I went back to my caching and I said 93 is it. So here's a few things that I learned. One, the devil is in the details. There are tons and tons of details. The biggest layer, the biggest impact you can have are all quick wins and things that you can add to your workflow on a daily basis. The things with the images and loading your fonts locally, purging your CSS, all of those things, you do them once and you don't really have to think about it again. And you're starting off, and particularly if you're using a JAMstack site, you're starting off from a really good place. And then you get into, the last part of your chess game, and those are a lot more incremental, but can add up over time. So don't discount the small changes, and don't just go for. I think another thing is that something that I see very commonly is that. One of the web performance gurus from Google will come out and will say, hey, everybody needs to do this. And people who are, no matter what kind of websites they're building or whatever, they're trying to follow those rules, whether or not it means anything for them, for their site. It really is very specific to your use case. And don't just follow the numbers. I mean, here we just kind of followed the numbers because this is a talk and it's short, but the rest of it is really using those numbers as, am I making a difference to my users? And that's what you have to really be thinking about, because some of them aren't going to show up in the numbers. And you have to use your judgment. And that's, why we all That's why everything's not on Squarespace, right? We have to use our judgment. And I think that's it. Static sites are awesome. There you go. Yeah.